It's so nice to see everyone again virtually. You're watching Music and Chat Exposé with yours truly, Shueh-li Ong, where I introduce newly released albums and pose questions to the artists to reveal the journey behind their creations. Viewers, please say hi in the live chat and let us know where you're tuning in from and put any questions you might have there as well. I'll attend to them as the stream moves along. For this is the first episode of Exposé, and I'm delighted to welcome John Tuohy and Jake Siberon of Xerosync. John and Jake also are members of Mile Marker Zero, whom I met when we played the New Jersey Prog House in 2019. Without further ado, let's welcome in John Tuohy and Jake Siberon. Hi, John. Hi,
Hey.
Jake.
What's going on? Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Jake, you seem to have frozen there. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Sorry, the power just went kicked and rebooted the router. I think everything's okay now, though.
I kind of hear you, but I don't quite see your movement. That's okay. We'll carry on, and hopefully that will resolve itself eventually. John and Jake, you're here to talk about your new album, 4.8, described as a musical sync journey. And we have a picture of the cover art in front of the two of you. You should be able to see it, viewers, in your live stream
Thank
signal there. It's beautiful cover art. So did you create it, John?
No, this was one of Jake's friends, actually. And the cover is a little bit of a nod to the last Mile Marker Zero album. Just a little bit of the fifth row, and you can see that there's some similarities, and that was on purpose to kind of hint that yes, this album you're listening to is by two guys in Mile Marker Zero. So
That's very nice. Oh, yeah, excellent. I like that. So 4.8 has an intriguing backstory, and it references the entire album references season 4, episode 8 of Games of Thrones, or GOT for short. It's the Mountains and the Viper episode, or The Mountain and the Viper. That's an episode where Oberyn Martell, the Viper, fights Gregor Cleargain, the Mountain. It's also described online as Game of Thrones' the goriest and most heartbreaking deaths.
That's us. We're very light in our approach.
Oh, all right. So talk us through how this album concept came to be, and then why forming a band to carry this plan out was necessary.
All right. So it's on me. How's that? Hopefully my signal's working. I'm not sure what my router's doing. But I believe what ended up happening was we were deep into the pandemic, and everybody was writing remotely, exchanging ideas online. And John had written this amazing piece of music that he had gotten a whole bunch of friends to play on, and everybody sent him some stems, and then he had sent it to me to mix. And when I heard it, I realized that there was this entire side of John that I had never really had a chance to experience, because most of our work was in Mile Marker Zero, which has it's not that it's confined to a box, but it is a certain set of tools that you use for that band kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And John is a music school student. I was a music school student, so we're exposed to everything from Beethoven to Mozart to anything 20th century, Schoenberg, and those Stravinsky, and then there's the whole jazz side of things. And so we're coming to we have a lot of musical experiences. So I didn't realize that John had this whole kind of this Latin arranging side and this obviously role side, but everything was just really. And so we decided so he sent me the tracks to mix, and after I mixed it, we said we should work on something together.
Okay.
And so that was the beginning of, well, what can we do? So that, and I had always, or I had this idea of syncing up a piece of art, a piece of musical art to a existing piece of media, such as when you play the Dark Side of the Moon record along with the Wizard of Oz, which is like an urban legend that they didn't write that intentionally to line up with the Wizard of Oz, but the urban legend was that it would line up if you played them at the same time. But it never, I would run that experiment all the time, and I would kind of try to look and see what people were talking about. And honestly, I'm not sure really it ever does line up, maybe like a little tiny bit. But then it occurred to me, it's like, well, I wonder if anybody actually ever tried that before, to write an album that was full of songs that were recognizable like as songs. So because you don't want it to be a music score, you wanted to sound like an album. The idea was that you played the album and never really know that it's synced up to any kind of TV show or movie. And so that was the first goal of it, make an album. And then the second part was that it actually ends up syncing up to the episode. That's a very short version of the story.
Thank you. I know I was going to ask you this question later, but I'm just kind of curious. How much did you feel responsible for making sure there was some connection with that season 4, episode 8?
Very, very much. So what Jake was sort of alluding to was that this album was kind of a dichotomy just from the beginning, which was this should be a progressive rock album that he and I would write, that people would listen to and just be like, oh man, this sounds cool. Is there a concept? And the songs are, like you would listen to in a progressive rock, progressive metal album. And yet, if you knew the secret, which we didn't talk about for about a month until after we put the record out, was that if you were to sync up from the very beginning of our album for the very beginning of the episode, there are a lot of things that sync together, like especially the fight scenes and things you mentioned, the goriness of that fight scene, which is at the end of the episode. Every time there's a sword strike, something happens in the music. Every time the camera angle switches, there's something that is reflected in how the music goes. So very much all the stories are, the lyrics are all pertaining to sort of either what's going on that the characters are talking about, where they are in the plot, or sort of what they're feeling about this. And Jake actually has a lot of sort of familiarity with all the novels and everything too, so he could kind of bring to his lyrics, he could bring sort of some things into the characters that you would know from not just necessarily watching Game of Thrones, but reading the novels. So that's a long answer to your question, which is very much responsible to make sure both that the album just sounds like a great album and you could not know what we did at all and just enjoy it. Hey, two guys from MMZ, they put out a side project on this side. And then on the other side, if you actually were to watch the sync, see how every time there's a new scene, there's a new song. Every time that something happens, it's reflected. Anytime there's a theme, that is when a character is on screen. In another scene, there's a similar theme with that character too. So.
Very interesting. There you go, viewers. Take a listen and take a watch if you haven't already. So speaking of the duo or two members from MMZ, why a duo? Did you consider adding other members, or did you think, Jake, that John was it? Just two of us. Just the two of us.
Uh-oh.
Jake, you're frozen.
Oh no. Am I here? Check 1, 2. Can you hear me?
That's a great face on his picture right there. That's good.
Jake,
I can hear you. I can hear you now.
Oh, you can hear me now. Okay, great.
Yeah.
I don't think there was any a decision on purpose to not include other people. I think it was sort of just the way the pandemic was, and everybody was kind of in their own little isolated bubbles. And we were, to be honest, we were also working on the new MMZ album at the same time. And I think, yeah, John, can you help me with this? I don't really think we made a decision to not include people. It was just sort of organic and that.
Yeah, we knew that we were going to have guests on the record, just for fun, but it was never. Yeah, we never really. It wasn't like, oh, we're not going to do this with MMZ. It's not really the way we did this. Is not really sort of the way MMZ typically works. You know, typically we get in a room together and we play, at least 2 or 3 of us at least, and we kind of work through ideas and things. And because of the way we did this, it was me in my studio, it was Jake in his studio, and so it was just sort of a natural progression to kind of go back and forth like that. But we did have our keyboard player, Mark Fossarelli. He played on a few tracks from Mile Marker Zero, so that was really great to have him.
There you go. So it seems that John and Jake wrote every other track on the album. How was this decision made, and also how did you name the tracks? Did you kind of put it to a vote, or did you pick the names independently of each other and then suggested it to the other person, like, take it or leave it, but this is what I'm gonna call it?
Yeah, I mean, at first we were just referring, for the longest time we were just referring to them as the scenes. We'd be like, okay, we just took every other scene. So John took the even numbers, 0, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. I took the odd ones. That was just seemed like the fairest kind of way to do it. And it it just divides evenly down the line, minutes wise, as far as how much you had to compose. And then, so for the long time, we just did scenes. We just would refer to them as scenes. And then I think it was John was like, dude, we got to name these songs. And so I think that we just named them from the lyrics, probably.
Mostly, yeah.
Or mostly, yeah. Or maybe like a little, because at first we didn't know how much we were going to tell people what we had done. So a lot of things were trying to hint at what we had done, just in case we didn't tell anybody, and then somebody would figure it out on their own. So we were trying to drop a lot of Easter eggs in that sense.
I see. Oh, by the way, our good friend Mark Fossarelli is online. He said,
hey, Mark.
Yay, guys. Hold on, let me just sort this out quickly. Text. Oops. Yes, it's okay. No, sorry, but the little speech bubble needed a little adjustment. So if you give me 5 seconds, here we go. Now I can see Mark Fossarelli saying, yay, guys.
All right. Hey, Mark.
Life and the problems that come with life. So back to you two. You have chosen 2 songs for us to listen to, which sum up a lot of what Xerosync is about, said John to me in the email. I made 40-second clips of the 2 and I joined them together in my best crossfade. Jake wrote the first one that you'll hear, the end of the first one you hear, called Now I See You, followed in track order by the next one, which was written by John, Deception and Cunning. But before you listen to them, tell us, John, Jake, what is Xerosync all about?
You got it, John.
Okay. Okay. Xerosync is... wow. Okay. So I would say it's a very ambitious project, right? It's a progressive rock album. I mean, that kind of, but in a wide variety. This is not like, it doesn't sound like we're trying to ape, I don't think, Dream Theater or Rush, even though we love all those bands and we're big progressive rock. I mean, we're in Mile Marker Zero. I mean, and that is one of our big loves. But it kind of cuts a wide swath of things. And this is I've said this before in some other places, but I think it bears repeating. I don't think this has ever been done before in this way. This is I've said this before, sort of tongue in cheek, but like, this is sort of a combination of a score, a soundtrack, and bad lip reading. is sort of how it's some version of all that together, but wrapped up in actual songs, which is, I don't think anybody's ever done this before. So I guess I would say this is an ambitious progressive rock project that's trying to do something new with the art form and synthesizing multiple art forms sort of at the same time.
Wonderful.
How was that, Jake? Is that okay?
That's good.
You sold me. Sold. I shall buy 1 million copies.
We will take that.
All right. Okay, let's move to that montage I was telling you about. And while we play the montage, you won't hear John, Jake, and I speaking for a good reason. So here we go. Here's the montage.
It's a sun too bright to stare. We'll just wait until the earth stands still and I finally call you.
So we'll just wait for a few seconds so that we let a bit more of that live stream be seen by the viewers, and then I'll ask you the next question. But while we wait, I do have some pictures that John sent me of the two of them in various poses, in various playing poses. And you can see the two of them on drums, bass, guitar. So we know that at least one of you got a chance to read and savor and favor George Martin's novel series, and had some idea of what you felt the importance of the Game of Thrones series was, at least what you wanted to bring out from the Game of Thrones series in that season 4, episode 8. And John, you had mentioned that you liked Russian, Dream Theater, and so on and so forth. So we're curious as to what your musical tastes, what you might consider your musical taste would be then for each of you. Would they overlap, or are they precisely duplicated?
No, I mean, I love that. That's a great question. So, I mean, this is the same with mile marker 0 too, is that we all come from, we have a Venn diagram that sort of meets in the middle for a lot of bands and a lot of styles, but we also have a lot of tastes that are outside of the genre, which I think helps make it fresh. For me, and I'm sure Jake will talk about all his influences, but I love a lot of things. I love jazz, I love fusion, I'm a big fan of all that stuff. For many decades, mostly 60s and 70s. I love pop music. I grew up with Van Halen and the Eagles. Like, those were two of my big rock influences. So it kind of it's sort of, and then Jake and I both studied jazz in college as performance majors. So like, there's a lot of these things that sort of swirl around us in different ways. And Jake likes a lot of things that I'm not. Maybe it's not my favorite thing, and it's vice versa. So what's nice about that is that it is very easy for us to have new ideas that we wouldn't have had on our own. Like Jake will come up with something like the chorus of "Now I See You," which is just such an infectious pop hit type thing. I'm like, man, this is amazing. I never would have thought of doing that, and I love that. That to me, that's our strength in being able to pull from these different things.
Jake, did you want to add to that?
Yeah. No, I mean that pretty much sums it up. That large Venn diagram. But music is music, right? Like when it's done really well, you can't really fault it, I guess. So like, even though like John might listen to things that I don't listen to or don't speak to me in a certain way, I definitely can respect all of it. And that's true of in Mile Marker Zero as well, because for example, these guys listen to a band called Meshuggah, which is like a uniquely intense kind of band that I just never spin. But I do appreciate how they use it in their own writing. If that makes sense? So like, it's cool. It's cool. Like I like their versions of what Meshuggah means to them, kind of thing. I know that's a weird way to look at it, but yeah.
I understand. So, some of us are fans of a certain, let's say, movie genre. And let's pick sci-fi, for example. And when we think of sci-fi, immediately the sonic elements come to mind. It's got to have this feature. So you can't help but be tied to the references that you're familiar with. You can't kind of like separate yourself from it. You can somewhat, but it's very difficult to you feel indebted to that genre to write similarly. Did you have any personal leanings like that? Let's say you like fantasy or sci-fi or the genre that Game of Thrones is in, and you felt that you had to somehow include some of those references, sonically speaking, of course, to how you represented your writing, and that in any other way it wouldn't just be right.
Also a really, really amazing question. I think what we decided on at the beginning, or anytime we work on an album, including Mile Marker Zero, we try to develop the palette of what, mainly instrumentation. Because although like it's kind of cool when somebody is doing like a progressive metal thing, like Richard Henshaw's, who's the guitar player for Haken, his solo album, all of a sudden in the middle of the second track just busts out a tenor saxophone solo, like, just ripping up a tenor sax. Like it's really cool in the prog genre to like the prog genre allows those kinds of licenses and that experimentation. So when we were deciding what the album was going to sound like, we definitely knew that it had to be prog because it had to line up with these scenes. And in order to make it sound like a song, like a piece of music, you had to have some push and pull and liberties with song format. The closest thing I think we have to a song format that would be, considered popular is Now I See You, which is that, intro, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, outro kind of thing. That, and to be honest, that is the least synced song as far as like when you played along with the episode. There's very little, apart from the mood and the vibe and some of the lyrical content, there's not much that matches the let's say like the movement of the characters or any kind of things that happen versus the second to last song on the album, which is the sword fight, the final fight between the Mountain and the Viper. John orchestrated that to almost to every single sword hit. It's a masterwork in like alternative scoring, I guess, let's call it that. But to answer initially your question, yeah, we decided on what the palette was going to be, and a lot of it, and leans towards rock and roll because John's a guitar player, I'm a guitar player, so it kind of made sense that it was going to be some distorted guitar, which automatically kind of like centers you in a rock and roll format. but there was not any much. I would say that there was nothing really that anchored us into doing something specific to any kind of genre or any kind of band or influence. It was really, I think the beauty of the work is that we just took the gloves off and said anything is available, send it over, and then we would discuss it, kind of thing. But you know, our backgrounds are our backgrounds, and we knew that it was going to be a prog record, so it was easy to sort of write within those, you know, color within those lines, so to speak. And then not 100%, but every once in a while, you know, like, because we have violin on the album, we have bassoon, we have a string quartet. What else, John? We have a whole bunch of things on there that.
But no theremin.
No theremin. Oh, it's there, but we muted it when we did the final pass. I'm sorry. No, I'm just kidding.
Theremin?
Yeah. It was. I want to say from my perspective, that was perfect, Jake. But I also want to add to it that no, we never said it must sound like a sci-fi thing, or let's take some tropes from sci-fi, or let's here's a sonic it was never that way, because ultimately this should just sound like an album. So I don't want it to sound like a sci-fi album. I don't want it to sound like a, you know, I don't want it to be like pigeonholed and necessarily into anything that, you know, will be dated in a decade or whatever. It was really just song first, but with the acknowledgement that we had to follow the scenes and do all that technical stuff that we could get into later too, if you want, about how do you actually do something like this. But yeah, we tried very hard to not limit ourselves, but in any of those things, other than like what Jake said, which was like, well, we're a rock band. So what will a rock band do? What anything that any rock band has ever done is open to us, you know? So
my next two questions are about how you work together. First is about lyrics. Did you do much the same with lyric writing, or did you felt responsible, or were you responsible solely for your own tracks? Or did you say, hey, John, you know, I'm stuck here. What do you think?
No, that's really great. Yeah, so Jake had mentioned before that we each wrote every other song.
Yeah.
The one that we took lead on, I would say, are the ones that we wrote the lyrics on too. And there were some things, mostly, if I'm being honest, I would do a demo and send something over to Jake and go, I hate this lyric here. Can you help me with this? This is what I put down. I can't think of anything better. Or I don't like the way that I sang this thing. Can you give me clues? Maybe it's the word, you know. And then Jake is a producer at heart, you know. Jake produced the last MMZ album, and he also did this record too. So he was very good at going, no, this is fine, like calming me down most of the time. That lyric's fine, or maybe you want to say it like this, and we had a Google Doc with some suggestions. Hey, how about this or this? And it's, oh, okay. But mostly, you know, 99%, if it's my song, it's my lyrics. If Jake's song, it's Jake's lyrics.
So it sounds like, Jake, did you have anything to add to that?
Nope, that's great.
That's about it. That's sums it up. So, and you know, it sounds like the two of you are very much similar in musical background and your approach, and very much goal oriented similarly. Then my question, therefore, is about performance. I'm quite certain you both play somewhat differently. You have your own individual take on things and preferences. You know, you might not play the same line, articulate that same line or phrase similarly. What would you say would be the main difference or strength of each of you? Let's say we were to say both play guitar or both play bass. What would be your strength or / difference? Something that stands out. So when we hear it, we know, oh, that's Jake's playing, or that's John's playing for sure. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I don't know, man. What do you think? I mean, I can think of some high level stuff. I don't know about.
Well, I know that, like, I would say, I know, and these are things I've said to you before, like, and so a lot of, even though we wrote every other track, there are spots on let's say like the songs I wrote that I would leave blank, and I'd send them over to John. And I'd say, I need your specific guitar voice over this, because I do have a ceiling on my guitar playing, because my main instrument is drums. I went to school for drums, and then some composition. So I've always loved to play guitar, but there is a ceiling there. And I would say the distinct difference probably between our guitar playing, at least, is I think in piano, I think in keyboard. So all of the guitar solos that I played on the album were actually composed on keyboard first. I wrote them out, and then I took them to the guitar, and then I figured out how they were going to sound. So if you had to, I don't know how distinctly, how close people are listening, but I think it would be really easy to hear the difference, because mine seem to be on the grid. There's a lot of the very similar kind of a diatonic lead up to some bend or two, but mainly it's kind of like piano sounding. I know that, it sounds strange. Whereas when John plays, it sounds like a guitar player. As far as like, to me, like the bends are more intense, and like the bending over, like, like I'm very precise. Like I go, like, since I write in keyboards, like, okay, I need a half step bend here or a whole step bend here. Whereas when John plays a solo, it's definitely more heart and more feeling. And it's like, whatever happens right here is going to happen. It's like, oh, I overextended. I went up two steps instead of one, like there's no, there. So I really enjoy that. I really enjoy the way John plays guitar for real. Is the best way to say it. I know that that's a distinct difference between our playing, but yeah, I mean, I don't know, John, do you have anything to say to that?
Yeah, well, a couple things. One is our time feel is different. That's the biggest distinction to me, is that we have which I think works really nicely in a lot of ways. We have and it's sort of hard to put your finger on, but if you hear my original demos that I programmed the drums in, versus Jake playing, if we're talking about drums for a second, like Jake playing drums to it, there's a very cool way that that his feel affects everything, which I love. And he has that feel kind of on every instrument, which is great. Obviously, drums being his main one, I can tell immediately what it is. I think feel is probably is probably the main thing I can tell the difference between, if we're just taking our guitar playing. Jake also has a really deep funk language and stuff from all the Prince and Michael Jackson and stuff that he learned when he was a kid. And I can play that stuff, but it's not quite as it doesn't feel quite the same when I do it versus Jake. So that's. And then the main difference you're going to find is going to be actually in the writing and not necessarily in the physical playing. Although I tend to, especially in melodic lines, I tend to go in odd places that maybe wouldn't be kosher in a classical sense. I like adding some dissonant notes, and I like adding some things and some phrasing that you think is going to stop, but then it's not, and then it goes on, and some things like that. So. I mean, it's a great question. That's the only things that pop to my mind are that.
Those are interesting answers. Jake, did you want to say something else? I saw you.
Yeah, because I like how he said, like, he adds the dissonance, and I do tend to think more in like really bright kind of major seven. Like, I try not. I personally don't accept much. So like, but that's what made the record so cool, is because we went back and forth. You do kind of get like a roller coaster thing where like. It's not too much of the same, which is really I know that I personally enjoy listening to it for that reason. Because I'm self-critical, I'm an artist, whatever, I tend to enjoy John's songs more than my own, but it's sort of like putting up with my songs to get to John's songs. It makes it really exciting to listen to the album.
And it's the opposite for me, so.
Well, there you go. So that's mutual admiration at work. Yeah, the perfect duo.
That's the only way to do something this intense. This was, I probably mentioned this before, but I think it's worth repeating. To do like the scene that I did, Time Runs Out, which is track, that was 11 on the album, right? Yeah. So Time Runs Out, that's the fight scene that I did.
I'm going to show the track list while you talk about it.
Okay.
Oops.
I probably 100 hours writing, fixing, not even recording, but just figuring out how to show what's going on the screen and the music. So something that intense, something that's going to be just focus hundreds of hours on this one thing versus just getting in a room and jamming on 3 chords. You have to do that with someone that you respect, that you trust, that for me, that you're friends with, that you know intimately, that you can, because you can really, I know he's going to give me some leeway and not be like, oh, this stinks, forget, because he's going to take me another 50 hours to get it right. Jake was great with that, and we tried to do that with each other's compositions, and if there was anything that there were holes in section, it'd be like, all right, you're going to fill this in. I know you're gonna. So that's what was so fun about doing this album. Something that could be so tedious if it's the wrong partnership. I don't know how it would have. We probably would have been frustrated and just said, you know what, this is too hard, forget it.
Speaking of compositional devices, were there such items that you both shared, e.g. time signatures? The much talked about item, or keys. How about recurring themes? Oh, I like this type of motifs. These type of motifs are what I should be using more of and what you should be using more of. Were there similarities between okay.
Here's the cool part. I love that question, and I'm sure Jake's going to have something there too, because we didn't talk about any of that when we were sending our demos. But what we did do was that since we were writing in order, I did the first, Jake does the second, I do the third. We would listen to what each other had just did and go, oh, that's cool. I like that thing. And then we would then take that on, that character. If it is a time signature change, if it's a theme, if it's a melodic thing, if it's Jake interpolated some of my melodic material from Deception and Cunning in a later track on the album when the same character is on, but he does his treatment of it. So it was never something that we discussed. The only thing that we discussed was sound palette. That was really the only thing that was like, we need to go, so like, minimal 80s style synths. We want this to be, my idea was this should have a sort of a golden 1970s style, even though it's not going to sound 1970s. I want to hear some mellotrons. I want to hear organs. I want to hear strings that would be in the 70s and not, reminiscent of the 70s, I should say. That was the only thing that we had a discussion on as far as the material, because it sort of just nicely laid itself out as we were writing.
Jake, did you want to?
Yeah, that was it. That was great.
That was great.
Because I was going to say was, we wrote it in order, and so each song just built on the last, where we left off kind of thing.
And you went track 1 first, and then 2, oh, wow.
Yeah. Actually, that's not true. We didn't know we were going to include the opening credits or the closing credits when we first started working.
Okay.
So we wrote the scenes first, and then the last things that were written were track 1 and track 12.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
And you can kind of, so I mean, that's the way I know that I worked on it out of order. I don't know if you did, John. I worked on it out of order, but I sent John in order as, because I wanted to your point, I wanted to see what I could take out from what he had written to make it very conceptual, because we did want the audience, whoever listened to it, to distinctly realize it was a concept album. So instead of sort of, when we did the fifth, we wrote the main melodies first, like before anything, right? Okay, these are going to be the hooks of the album, and let's see where we can put them in. Versus this one was, we know we're going to need those things, but let's see how it unfolds organically as we write to this existing piece of media.
Excellent. I'm going to have a quick chat with the viewers. Viewers, if you have any questions, please put them in the live stream. You know what to do, and I will post these questions to the artists. If you don't have any, I shall continue. So I'm going to do a quick scan Scan, 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 scan. I have one from Gary. You might
Gary.
have responded to it already, but I'll read it out to you. I saw how some of the tracks were two parts. Were those split in two, e.g., where John wrote one part and Jake wrote the other?
That's a great question, Gary. If you see that on if you might be referring to the YouTube synced version of this. No, the only reason they're split apart on the YouTube is because I couldn't. You can only upload up to 5 minutes of any of these synced clips without them being taken down. So after figuring out, it took me a long time to figure that out. So that's the only reason they're split on the YouTube playlist that we haven't made public yet. But I guess if you look for Xerosync, you will find it. Now, as far as the actual tracks go, if you go from track 1, I wrote that. Jake wrote track 2. Full responsibility anyway of each track like that.
So speaking of hiccups, were there any challenges or memorable moments? Any anecdotes you'd like to share with us that you have?
Let's see. Well, I mean, I wonder, not really because I live in Portland, on the West Coast. So we did this all in John lives outside of New York City. So we did this very remotely phone conversations and a lot of texting and a lot of file sharing and things of that sort. So I guess that process, and it was also during the pandemic, like the full lockdown. So like nobody was going anywhere kind of thing. So I don't know. I mean, if I'm being honest, that's probably the anecdotal elephant in the room, is that the whole thing was written under duress.
I suppose then you use the digital audio workstation like most of us do. What's your DAW?
I'm Logic.
I'm Pro Tools.
I'm Logic too.
Yeah.
I like Logic. I mean, they're all great. I mean, at this point, what's great is that they all are great. All of them sound incredible. You can do all the things you need to in any single one, just the one that you're comfortable with at this point, which is great, because it didn't used to be that way, you know?
True.
So, and I want to say, as far as like anecdotes, if I'm going to get serious for a half a second.
Okay.
But it was, this was a very, very difficult time in all of our personal lives. And I mean, I know it was with everybody, but you know, we had deaths in the family during this time. We had it was really, really dark. Not to cry here, but basically I lost all my gigs, right? As did many people. I'm sure you know how that goes. And all the things that life for many people, including us, was totally different now. So rather than this being sort of a fraught thing, this project and the Mile Marker Zero project, it got me through this time. Like as corny as that might be to say, it was something that I could go do every day. I could be creative, which is my favorite thing on the planet to do. I could be doing something so cool that I can't wait to send one of my best friends. Hey, oh my God, I hope Jake likes this part. This got me through. So it's actually the opposite of how making a record usually is. For at least in my experience, a lot of time especially if you're writing with a lot of people, it's tough, and there's a lot of back and forth, and there's a lot of people who think, everyone has thoughts and opinions, and you're trying to make everybody happy. But this was unique in the way that we were so locked in that I didn't have any of those misgivings. I never had any strife. And the cool part was if Jake was like, I'm not feeling this section, it's like, okay, cool. How do I make it better? What would you suggest? It was very open, which is an amazing way to work. And I wish, other than the duress of this time, I wish everything flowed like as difficult as it was to write this album. I wish everything flowed that I do like this, and you could put all the passion and emotion into this in this way. I don't know if this time will ever be repeatable again. So it was great. It was honestly great.
I have to agree with you on that. The fact that being a creative person, you do need something or an opportunity to look forward to exercise your creativity. And similarly, I found that I could wake up and have my live streams to deal with and my fifth album to sort out. And so I was actively working on a daily basis and not being
Right.
too concerned, knowing I couldn't be too concerned about the near future because no one really knew what was going to be on the horizon. So yes, well, there you go. And speaking of missing your friends and not being able to be in the same room as them, you did get your keyboard player from MMZ, Mark Forcerelli, to play keyboard on one of your tracks, Deception and Cunning, the one we heard just a few minutes ago. What did Mark and MMZ think of the idea behind Xerosync?
Oh, they loved it.
Did they say,
which
we
was
all want to
great.
be part of it? Or did they say, oh, well, this is your
No.
project. We'll support
No.
you.
It was really more. It was no. I mean, we told the rest of the guys about the concept before we even started writing. We're like, I think this thing is really cool, and everyone to a T, everybody was like, that sounds really cool. I hope you can pull it off.
Yeah.
And the reason we got Mark on there is that, well, I mean, Mark is a phenomenal keyboard player and can play any style. Like he's amazing. And as I was writing some of the songs, because he's on a few of them actually, Deception and Cunning he plays a lot on, but I was thinking of him in mind specifically for a lot of the parts because he's been my keyboard player since we've been in MMZ, so I just think in those terms.
Yeah, I understand.
And what was so fun is that when I sort of, because I go overboard, as has been described sometimes. I go and I make very detailed demos, and then I wrote out all the parts in notation and things.
Wow.
And I knew with all the crazy time signatures that are going in, and so I was like, here, Mark, I play this, but do your thing, if you want to add some, and Mark, of course, sent it back 2 days later, and it was just amazing, and it was, so it was an absolute pleasure to have him on there.
Well, there you go. Speaking of time signatures, and Mark did say in his live chat, I was blown away when they told me.
Awesome.
There you go. So, I believe you probably tried everything under the sun musically and perhaps lyrically for this album, but was there anything else that you would have liked to try, or did you fulfill all your lyrical and musical dreams in one album, or for that album at least, that you could imagine?
Oh, I know that I want to keep going. I know we've already talked about can we do this? Maybe that's like the vibe of the band, is that we just keep picking pieces of media to write new music to.
Okay.
There were some and then there were some things that ended up on the editing room floor, so to speak, because I, for example, seen what is the name of the song? The Last Night on the Earth. There's 2 other versions of that are completely different from what ended up on the album, because I would write it all out, I'd get the demo situated, and I'd listen back, and I'd be like, nope, that's not working. So then I would scrap all those hours. And the one that ended up on the album ended up being the 3rd version, which are all very distinctly different from each other. So it's weird, because working in that sense, working in the confines of, because we wanted the music to match the scenes. The scenes were measured, okay, scene 9 is 5 minutes and 40 whatever seconds. So all the music that I wrote had to sit in that, so that we both wrote for whatever corresponding track, had to sit within that time frame. So it's kind of weird, because it's not that it made it easier, it made it so that it pointed it in a certain direction and confined it. So I know that as far as the musical dreams being realized, I mean, I don't know if that ever is going to be the case of, for people who write music, but I feel like the album came out really, really great and really, really strong, and I would certainly love to do more.
Is there anything that you discovered about yourself musically from doing an album like that? You know, after having done something similar, not that it's a bad thing, but you go through something that you're used to and you're passionate about, and some of the processes are repeated, and you try something different, and you kind of have to stretch yourself, extend yourself, and then in the act of extending, you realize something else, some of the muscle that you realize you had, which you hadn't extended before or for a while. Did you discover that, and what was that?
Oh yeah. I have a couple things. One is I realized that I can write for other instruments,
Oh,
which I was always really insecure about in the past. You know, if I do a demo, I'd be like, I don't know if this is right. You know, it's not the right groove or whatever. And I realized through this process that like I actually, after all this time and work, that I can conceptualize how something is supposed to sound in totality as an arranger, I guess you could say, right? Composer, arranger, and like that it actually will come out. It will come out well when it's done for real, which was a. This is probably to Jake's probably like, yeah, no shit, but like, but I wasn't really sure about that. The only time I'd ever done that before was in that one song that Jake had mentioned that I had written for a friend. That Jake helped mix and do these things. I wrote everything. I played most of the stuff. I did the incredible detail work like I was talking about, and just here, play this like this, like a composer rather than just a member of a band. So
Yeah.
that was one thing for me that I realized, and I like it. So I want to do more of that. And then the other thing was that this is the first time for me being a lead singer as opposed to just singing harmony, which I did on most of my tracks. And I was scared of it for a really long time. A lot of the reason is because in Mile Marker Zero, Dave is freaking awesome. He's such a great singer. I never want to sort of like, you know, well, Dave, I'm singing this song now. I'm not like that. He's so good. So having an avenue to actually try to see if I can find what a lead singing John sounds like. I got, as the process went on, I got more confident. I was like, wait a second, maybe I could actually do this. And so, I mean, that remains to be seen what happens moving forward. But I felt those two things stick out to me.
Wonderful. Jake?
Yeah. What did I learn? Let's see. Well, I think mainly what I really loved about the process being sort of playing it secretly, sort of, so, you know, because, you know, nobody was expecting it, and, you know, it was really a time to say, you know what, do just whatever you want. Like, don't, like that opening piano riff at the beginning of the second track, you know, like I wrote that, I made that up in a practice room when I was like 18 years old, kind of thing. And it always just stuck. I just put it away, you know, there's nothing amazing about it at all. But when I was writing that first thing, I was like, I'm gonna pull that out. Let me get a little head nod to my 18-year-old self that was kind of stuck in a packed room at the beginning of my musical journey, you know, freshman year of college, kind of thing. You know, just being able to not worry, because, you know, there was a moment, or there were several moments throughout the process where I was like, I don't even know if anybody's ever going to hear this. Will we even finish it? You know, those kinds of things, because we weren't taking it. There was no pressure to finish it. Basically, that's pretty much what it is. And I think what I've learned is that going forward, I don't think I'm ever going to let anybody pressure me ever again. I just think that, you know, it just has to be that way. You know, and it was like, to John's point about singing, it was like, no, John, you're going to sing because who cares? Like, really, at the end of the day, this is for me, this is for you. It's getting us through this time period in our lives. And if no one likes it, then at least we liked it. And we really, in a sense, we really did write this album for each other. You know, he was, I mean, I would listen to it as if I was listening to a new song from my friend who's also an artist, you know, and I would spin it over and over and over again, just letting it happen, you know, not to get overly whatever, but, you know, just experiencing the art and experiencing the artist, which is what music is really what it's all about. And we get hung up on commercialism and packaging and graphic and analytics, you know, and some of those things. And sometimes you can go too far down that rabbit hole. If, you know, I know and that's part of the business, and I'm not speaking, badly about the business, but I do know sometimes when we're looking at our analytics, and sometimes we're really big in France right now. I wonder what's in France, and it's like, all right, maybe we should do a song in French. It's like, well, gosh, we don't speak French. Well, not that anybody has that. I'm just, you can start moving in that direction, and it kind of just gets a little. So I know that this process in writing this record without any of those sort of expectations and limitations was really, really amazing and really freeing as an artist.
There you go. Thanks, guys. So I'm going to show the album cover again with the track list that's taken from the Bandcamp store. And I believe you can buy your album and your singles from the Bandcamp store. Can you buy the physical item, or are they digital right now? Still
digital only until we get enough demand.
Well, there you go.
That was the plan, yeah.
And that's the way the industry is going anyway. Digital downloads. I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately, but anyway, what do you hope? And I know some of our viewers have already bought the album or are going to. What do you hope? Well, there you go. Thank you from John and Jake. What do you hope people will take from listening to it? Besides all the good things that you already explained to us. In summary.
Well, I think for me, I would love it if people are listening to this album and get lost in it. Maybe they're getting lost in just the sonic part of it, or the compositions, or they're watching the sync and seeing how we sort of overlaid the record onto the, if they get lost in that and they can kind of forget their day to day for just a few minutes, that would be a win to me, because life can be very difficult, and that's what, hopefully, if you do good art, it takes you out of that for a moment. It puts you in touch with the sublime, not to sound too grandiose. And if our music does even a moment of that, then that is a win for me.
Jake?
Yeah, that's a connection. That's the best way to explain it. It's just, what's important that I think I would say about the album is that while it is synced to a Game of Thrones episode, and while all the lyrical content is derived from, let's say, what might be occurring with the characters and stuff, there is that third layer of putting ourselves in the character's shoes and then creating the lyrics as a result of that sort of investigation and discovery. So it's, I'd want people to make sure that, when you're listening to it, just don't think about it as a bad lip read, but also just as a sort of a reaction to the piece and how I feel about it. And then, there might be, or how John feels about it, and there might be someone out there listening going, oh, that's how I feel about this or that as well. And, so, because that's what makes that show so powerful, and honestly, the novel so powerful, and anything that connects with audiences like that is because we see ourselves in the work. So that's what I echo everything that John said, and add that little bit about connection and just response.
Thanks, Jake. Another query from Gary. Is it possible you might release a deluxe CD with some alternate tracks that are on the cutting room floor? I'm getting it if you do. That's Gary.
Gary, if you can get 100 of your friends to buy the record, then the answer is yes, and I will send it to you free of charge.
There you go, Gary. But Xerosync will be working on another album based on a similar concept soon.
That's the hope. The very next thing is the Mile Marker Zero album, which is going to be released next spring, which we will be talking about very, very soon. So We're shifting from Xerosync to that. So we're very excited about that. But we hope to continue this. I loved it. I had such an amazing time doing this with Jake, and I think it can only get better from here now that we know how to accomplish this and how to put together a record in this way. I can only imagine. I want to get in a room with him. How about that? Let's get in the same room and do this.
Wow, there you go. Will you be touring with this album? Playing any gigs or not?
We'd love to, but it would be very difficult to do.
Awkward,
If there's
yeah.
enough demand, if there's people who start to really hear this and we can fill a room, then we'd have to hire a bunch of musicians to do it with us.
Yeah.
But I would love to. It's not in the cards at the moment, though.
Yeah, of course. I understand. Viewers, any more questions from you? If not, I really enjoyed chatting with you, John, and you, Jake. It was so nice to see you again 4 years
Great to see you.
later.
Thank you.
Yes.
I can't believe it's been 4 years.
Yeah, I know. Time
Yeah.
flies. But everyone out there, thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining me on Music and Chat Exposé. Thanks for joining John and Jake of Xerosync. Thank you so much again for being
Thanks,
here.
everybody.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to move them out of the frame and just have me. Viewers, you have been awesome too. Please subscribe to be alerted to more of my Music and Chat broadcasts. And I'd like to take this opportunity to wish one and all a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, and more. Stay safe and stay well out there. And I'll see you on the next broadcast. Here's an applause for you guys. Bye out there. I'll keep the theme song moving for about a minute so that you can put your thank yous out there and goodbyes to the gentlemen. Okay. Bye, guys.